Okay. Hi, friends.
Hi, friends. It's Caitlin and Shanika from Get Checkered, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown and community supported. We're coming at you after what is it called? It's the Sao Paulo Grand
Yep.
Prix, right?
Yep.
In Brazil.
They changed it this year. I guess we'll get into why, but used to be Brazilian GP, but it's the Sao Paulo GP this year.
The more you know. I am worse for wear today, and we're recording this way later than normal. I share a birthday with Lando Norris, and I had a lot of soju last night and was not even like a functioning human being until 2 p.m. So
But hey, she was watching the race, you guys.
yeah, my
That's
eyes were super
dedication.
closed, but I was paying attention. But this was a really good one. So I'm really glad that I willed myself enough to at least like get it on and to pay attention because this was a really, really good race. We have some kind of exciting announcements. Hey, Caitlin?
Kind of. Yes, I would say very exciting. We're actually kind of growing the Get Checkered fam, you guys. So we've been talking with two more females actually. So we have Nicole, and she will be sharing a blog post with us. She actually went to the Mexican GP, like so jealous, so excited to see how that experience was for her. We'll share that on our website. And we're welcoming Courtney to our family. She's going to be joining us as a contributor. So she's going to help out like on these podcasts. She's just in school right now, so we're going to give her some space. Don't like school comes first, yes. And then she's going to help us with social media and everything. So
Yeah. Look at that. We're becoming more legit. So
hey.
I'm going to make you ask now. Please review us on whatever you're listening to us on. I think like Apple Podcasts specifically because it ranks us higher. And share the podcast with your friends because the more people that know about our podcast, hopefully the more people we can bring on our little growing little team to provide you all with really great content. So share the podcast, listen to everything. All right.
And if you have any criticism about us, just like send us a message. See if we can fix it first.
Yeah, we're very coachable, I think is the right term. So
we're still learning.
yeah, exactly. We're gonna start off with some weekly updates, and one of them I actually alluded to, which is happy birthday, Lando Norris.
He's only 22, man. I cannot believe that.
Only
We knew
22.
he was young, but dang.
I just turned 28. So he is a Scorpio, like your girl, and I'm hoping he had a great birthday. Unfortunately, I feel like this race like didn't go the way that he wanted, which is kind of shit, but I'm sure that hopefully he had some way to celebrate, even though it seems like he was working all weekend. So I don't know, maybe there'll be a cake now.
I did see McLaren did share. They got him something. And it was cute. And then I actually saw on social media that Daniel Ricciardo was like putting his number 3 sticker on Lando's helmet.
Oh.
It was funny. It was cute. He's like, for my fans.
Yeah.
I thought it was very cute. But yeah, Lando Norris, 22. And November 13th is a great day for a birthday, you guys. Great day.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's also the birthday of my cousin. So look at that. All these really great people. What other the one headline that we were kind of waiting for? What are you seeing, Caitlin?
My cat is doing, he's barfing or pooping.
Uh-oh.
Oh my God. I don't even want to know. We might get back to that later.
Okay, I'm like, do you want us to pause again?
I mean, I have every intention of throwing that mat out because they did something to it earlier. I think he puked something up.
Ew. Kitties. Kitties. The one thing that we've all been waiting for is an announcement from Alfa Romeo, which was supposed to come today, wasn't it?
Yeah, they said, yeah, they would let us know after this GP. So we're kind of assuming it would happen today, but I don't know, maybe it'll come out tomorrow officially. But it's all about their second seat for next season. And they kind of like, I don't know, the commentators were like, well, we heard some stuff. Shanika saw something on Twitter. So it's like, we kind of know the cat's out of the bag, but it's not official yet.
Yeah. So the person that we've been talking about quite literally all season of Get Checkered long Guan Yu Zhou looks like he will be taking the second seat. I'm going to put the link to the tweet in the podcast description, but I don't know who this person is. Their handle Spanners Ready. Someone sent them a photo of the Shanghai Alfa Romeo dealership. And on the side of the wall, there's photos of Guan Yu Zhou, and it says, "Congrats to Zhou on becoming the first Chinese F1 driver." So it's pretty much confirmed at this point, I feel like.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. It's just like, it's kind of unfortunate that if Gio finds out this way too, right? Like through the grapevine, that's really hard. But
yeah, I'm hoping that they told him sooner than, I'm hoping they told him sooner than this weekend, because
yeah, you would hope so.
yeah, it's just not good if they held it off for as long as they did. At least publicly, I get it. Lots of things to figure out, but privately, I hope that Gio's known for at least a few weeks. But also today was just not the best race for him either. Like, now that he's in his final few races, it'd be nice to see him finish in the points. But
I mean, you remember when it was like Valtteri and no one knew if he was going to stay at Mercedes or not? As soon as the announcement came out, the next few races, he was just like killing it, and he's been killing it since.
True.
So maybe Gio, if it comes out this week, he's just like, okay, it is what it is, and he just starts like just going through the field for the next few races. That would be good to see.
Well, I hope so, because I think with Valtteri, it was the fact that he knew he had a multi-year contract that he was going to, like, he knew what his fate was. But I think with Gio, the concern is like, obviously now he knows, but
there's still uncertainty what to do.
Yeah, like, what is he going to do next? I think that's the kind of the concern for him. And I would be concerned if I were him about that too, being like, okay, I waited so long, there's no empty seats, so where does
unless maybe Alpha's doing like him as a reserve driver or something, and they told him that.
I guess we'll find out,
right?
Yeah,
everyone keep your eyes out. We'll find this out soon,
hopefully.
Right. That's kind of like, honestly guys, that's all we had for weekly updates today.
Yeah, there wasn't too much in the world of Formula One, though this weekend was jam-packed with stuff. So
yeah,
I think we made up for it.
We're kind of going from like straight from the Mexican GP, and then it's like everything after that ties into this Sao Paulo GP. So we're just gonna put it all together.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how we're doing it.
Looking for a way to give back? ATB Cares makes it easy for all Albertans to support the causes they care about. Donate to your favorite charity through ATB Cares, and ATB will match 20% of every dollar donated to eligible Albertan charities. To learn more and donate, visit atbcares.com.
So we're going to do some quick track facts. I say quick, there's actually quite a few notes. It was quite interesting reading all about this track. So like we were saying at the beginning of this episode, this year, 2021, they're calling it the Sao Paulo GP. Well, Gran Premio Sao Paulo, I think.
Oh, wait.
Is the name Portuguese.
I'm going to cut you off, but I think we need to share with people that we're going to be at Formula E.
Okay, we can share that. Yeah. Shanika and I, for her birthday, we got tickets to go see the Canadian, the Formula E in Vancouver for 2022. So join us there. It should be fun.
Exactly. If you are going, let us know, because
it's over Canada Day long weekend. So like, it's gonna be a good time.
Exactly. Right? All right, let's get back into the Grand Prix. Let me know why they changed the name, because I was very curious. And
okay, yes. So it's been known as the Brazilian GP, forever. So it's like, why is it called the Sao Paulo GP this time? And I got like this answer from the WTF1 team, and they said it has to do with the renewed contract for this Interlagos track to host F1 races until 2025. So the name, like when they re-signed this renewed contract, the name is meant to reflect more of the city's involvement, and like they want to put their name on it pretty much to prove it's not real hosting this Brazilian GP, because we get into some drama later. So yeah, it's meant to like help the city out, and it was part of the contract. So that's why it's going to be known as Sao Paulo GP. Um, yep. So, Sao Paulo is huge, you guys. I don't know if you were seeing like all the videos with all the teams flying in and they make their TikToks now, like come with us from Mexico to Brazil now. You're just seeing how big the city is. And you're like, how many high rises are there? Like it doesn't end. It's a lot of people. I've been to Sao Paulo once and it was for a 3-hour layover and I had to change airports and I almost didn't make it across the city in that time.
Jesus, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyways, I know. So this this track is known as the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace.
I don't know.
Better known as the Interlagos track. Pretty much Interlagos between lakes. Apparently there's 2 big lakes.
Oh, okay.
Sao Paulo, that is between. So yep. It's in the Interlagos neighborhood, yes. I would in Spanish, just like Ciudad for city. This one's in Brazil, Portuguese. Cidade Dutra in Sao Paulo.
Okay.
Doesn't mean much to me, but it's like in the city. You could see the pictures of like there's literally housing all around the track. How noisy would that be?
They seem to be like obsessed.
They love it. So maybe
for the weekend they're like, fuck it, like let's just deal with the noise just to be around all these drivers.
Maybe they rent it out for the weekend to be like people coming in to visit can just stay there.
Exactly. People coming in for the race, Airbnb.
Exactly.
Easy.
So yeah, there's that. This track, it was renamed after the Brazilian Formula One driver Carlos Pace, who died in a plane crash in 1977.
Oh, that's so sad.
So kind of like I was writing that and I'm like, kind of like the Mexican ones all about the Hermanos Rodriguez that passed away. I'm like, this is kind of sad when they're named.
But it's a great way to.
It's a memory.
Yeah, but it's kind of sad that's 2 now, I guess, races in a row. Yeah, where there's like a really sad story tied to the naming of it.
Yeah. Interesting though, like Ayrton Senna is from Sao
Oh, I didn't know that. So
honestly, maybe my facts are wrong and it's actually been renamed to Senna racetrack or something, but I don't think so. So I don't know. This Interlagos has hosted the Brazilian Grand Prix since 1972, but it wasn't a world championship. Okay. 1973 was world championship, and the first race was won by defending Formula One world champion and Sao Paulo local Emerson Fittipaldi. I was telling Shanika before this that I was watching the F1 TV post-race interviews, and his grandson is with Haas right now. I think he's a reserve or test driver. And he was the commentator for F1 TV post-race.
That's so
Pietro Fittipaldi. I thought it was cute.
I think that's so cute.
Right? Nice little tie in there. Okay, so I kind of alluded to like Sao Paulo wants Sao Paulo in the name, so you know it's not Rio.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of back and forth between Sao Paulo and Rio. And I think like it's probably a different extreme between those 2 cities of rivalry versus like Shanika and I know about Calgary and Edmonton here in Alberta. Like there's a rivalry there. I think this is much more extreme just because the amount of people that live in those 2 cities
probably
astronomically larger. So the Brazil GP has been between both Sao Paulo and Rio in the past. I tried to understand the timeline here. I think I got it. It started in Sao Paulo, Lagos, but there was safety concerns. It was very rough surface. So that was brought up by the drivers. And then after that concern was brought up, it went to Rio for a year at a track called, you guys, Jacarapacua. I think that's it.
It's a resident, like she will try so hard to pronounce things correctly. And I think you deserve a medal for that because I just butcher it and hope that it's okay. But I admire the fact that you try really hard.
Thank you. If anyone listening knows how wrong I said that, let me know, but be nice about it. I'm trying. So it went to Rio for that year. And then I think they tried to fix it. It came back to Interlagos for the next 2 seasons. And then, so that was 79 and 80, it was back in Interlagos. But come 1980, you have emergence of a Rio hometown F1 guy who we know as soon to be Max Verstappen's father-in-law, Nelson Piquet. So there was pressure to return the race to Rio. So it returned to Rio from 1981 to 1989.
Oh, wow. That's a long stint.
Right. And then Ayrton Senna started emerging and negotiate, and he's from Sao Paulo. Negotiations were made to bring it back to Sao Paulo in 1990, where it's remained since. So, yeah.
Wild. It's interesting that they made those decisions just based off of the drivers, essentially. And like,
I think probably more went into it. Like one city was like, oh yeah, we have this guy as our hometown. Well, we're willing to pay for this race now. And the other one's like, oh, our person's like, no, big, or we don't have one right now. Why would we pay so much for one when we have other developments we should be focusing on? Which I do agree.
That's a good
point. But yeah, no, it's interesting, I think, between those two cities. So we'll see. Maybe there will be a Rio race again.
I mean, you know what? Maybe there's a second Brazil race. They have one in Rio and one here.
They're already at 23 races. How many you want?
I mean, how are they not exhausted? That's like one question.
I also heard, because it's Brazil. No, it was Mexico last week. It's Brazil this week, and it's Qatar next week. That's 3 different continents in 3 weeks. And like time change between Mexico and Brazil is not bad.
Yeah.
But going to Middle East, that's going to take time to get over jet lag.
But do they even have time to be jet lagged? Like, I feel like, do you just like,
do they take pills?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what pills are you taking? Are you taking like hypnotherapy to like fall asleep faster? Like, what's going on? Because they're just all over the place. It's so much effort.
So, okay, just quickly going back onto the track, though, I still got lots more facts to go over. We had lots of quote unquote winners for the World Drivers' Championship crowned at this race, actually, because it's so close to the end of the season. So we've had, like, we've seen Alonso kind of claim the title 2005, 2006. We saw Kim in 2007. We saw Lewis Hamilton claim a title. Jenson Button claimed a title here. So it's just like, at this point, for a lot of years, it's kind of like they're so far ahead, like this is when they can announce it. But we're definitely not in that situation right now.
Absolutely not.
From the past winners of this track, and especially during the turbo hybrid era, you can kind of tell it's a Mercedes favorite track, just because it's like Rosberg, Hamilton, Vettel in a Ferrari, back to Hamilton. Max won in 2019 though, and I thought that was interesting. But
that is interesting.
Didn't have it in 2020, and then you have Lewis. I'm not going to go there yet. But yeah, you can see it's kind of a Mercedes favorite track. It's another anti-clockwise track. I almost think that, like, since I've started doing these track facts, lots of them have been anti-clockwise.
I don't know,
but not many are technically. So whatever. This one's quite hilly. There's lots of ups and downs and requires a lot of power from the cars. The current lap record is actually Valtteri from the 2018 Brazilian GP. He had like a 1:10 lap. It was not beat this year in the race. There are 71 laps because it's a very short track, and that's what I think a lot of people like about it. It's only 4.3 kilometers per lap. It's full throttle about 64% of the time, which is considerably more than the past few races. Lots of fast straights, which I guess like that plays into Mercedes and McLaren. There's a mix of slow and fast corners. So we actually see that like Max and Red Bull have great second sectors, just based on the characteristics of the corners in that sector. There's about 36 gear changes per lap, so a lot less than some of the other tracks recently. 15 corners. There was like the 20 laps at Coda, 66 gear changes. So it's quite
significantly less. Yeah.
Yes. There's great opportunities for overtaking in some of the corners. Technically, like it's categorized too as a high downforce track, is what I found from racefans.net. That would make me think it's favorited towards Red Bull, but I don't know. But
I mean, obviously the straights just make such a difference for Mercedes. It's insane.
Another fact I got from carthrottle.com is that altitude is a factor here, as the circuit sits about 800 meters above sea level. Cars require more wing than they would at sea level, but the thinner oxygen reduces drag. But this will result in approximately 13% loss of engine power.
Jeez, that's a lot. Okay.
But I mean, that's going to go across everyone. So
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's a level playing field, but that's a
right?
lot.
Interesting. The weather can change really fast. It is Brazil, and I do remember this from my time in Brazil. Lots of rain, just like kind of coming out of nowhere. It turned out to be a little bit colder of a day for the Saturday sprint race, but it was well hot for race day.
The boys
did
were
not rain.
sweating today. They were sweating today.
Like that's where the rain came from, all the sweat. But Lewis has a lot of love from the Brazilian people, and I think this is like, we saw it after this race, and we also see it just on all his posts. You know what I'm talking about, when everyone's just like, love from Brazil, and it's just like purple hearts everywhere.
He's like, it's interesting to, I guess, like make the connection this year around, because you're right. If you look at Lewis Hamilton's post, there's so many people saying that they're watching from Brazil, or that they love him and that they're from Brazil. So to actually see the crowds, I was like, holy crap, like they really adore him. And that's so great. I think that really helps the drivers like get some momentum and to feel good while you're racing, which is nice.
And like, he is definitely cognizant of all the love that is coming from Brazil. He's like, after the race, he was always like, oh, thank you to the fans. He was like, obrigado. And just like waving the Brazil flag. Like it was really nice to see, kind of, right? Like he obviously has a lot of love back to Brazil. I did notice, like, when I was looking at the grandstand, I thought I saw like a range of colors for hats. So I'm like, interesting. Are we going to have like a lot of different teams?
I thought that too.
Right?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just like the different Mercedes color.
Truly, like over the years, or like what? I don't know. But I was thinking
it was resounding for one team.
Yeah. It was I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna have a good split here, but no, it was just Mercedes, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like Zandvoort in Netherlands, it was all Red Bull. Mexico was all Red Bull.
Yep.
Going back to all Mercedes this time.
Exactly.
So
need some balance.
Some quick tire talk about this race. Pirelli decided on the medium hardness for the slick, so the C2, C3, C4 again. This track on their infographic is pretty much all categorized as average.
Okay.
So it makes sense that they picked like the average set of slicks. So it was 3 out of 5 average in braking. Lateral. I did not spell that right in the notes. Tire stress, asphalt grip, asphalt abrasion, and then it's actually a medium high for traction and downforce.
Okay.
And then a lot of people are like anticipate 2 stops for this race, likely staying on medium and hards. And then also heard from the commentators that we mentioned that the track was warmer on Sunday. The commentator said that the track was actually 20 degrees Celsius hotter on Sunday than they were on Saturday. So they just anticipated a lot more like wear on the tires, the tire temperatures. Yeah. So that's kind of the beginnings of the race. Prepping for everything, pretty much.
With Pod Power, our sponsors are making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, Edmonton Community Foundation is helping us give a Pod Power shout out to Your Forest. Your Forest is a podcast about the natural world. Hear stories about the environment, renewable resources, conservation, forestry, hunting, fishing, and more. This is a podcast for those who cannot live without the joys and wonders of all wild things. Find Your Forest wherever you get your podcasts or at yourforestpodcast.com. That's yourforestpodcast.com.
Yep. And then we're hit with things leading up to the sprint and the race, one being massive freight delays.
Like wild. Like we started seeing on social media on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. of these freight delays. Like cars were not there.
And not just like one team. It was, I think, about 4 of them still didn't have their vehicles. How does
like it was trouble getting them from Mexico to Brazil, and I'm like, oh my god.
That's what floors me, because they've done this like a million times,
right?
And we understand, obviously, with COVID, there's a lot of just issues with supply chain, but this is like not technically in a supply chain. So I don't know how. Yeah, so scary. Like, what would have happened if the cars just didn't show?
Right. And like, what's gonna happen going from Brazil to Qatar? That's even further distance.
Yeah,
there's even more language barriers between these two countries. Like, that like floored me when I saw that. I'm like, this is the most expensive sport in the world, and freight's becoming an issue.
Yeah, and you've also done this a million times, so I'm like, I don't understand. That's okay though. I mean, obviously everyone was able to race. The FIA waived the usual overnight curfew and had to push back the usual scrutineering deadline by 15 hours to just 3 hours before Friday's first practice session.
So yeah, these teams are literally working overnight to get everything set up. Like, insane.
It sounds like a nightmare.
Right, like nothing about the schedule ended up being affected.
Yeah,
thank Lord, but
yeah. There have some probably very exhausted crew members, basically, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think so. And they don't get a break.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay, so that was kind of like, that was the Wednesday, Thursday, you guys. The Friday, we had the first free practice, and then we have like quote unquote conventional qualifying, right? Your Q1, Q2, Q3. And Lewis ends up in P1, Max ended up in P2, but there was drama. Oh my God, there was drama.
There was so much drama, and it all sparked because of a rear wing issue. A little gap.
That like Max and Red Bull suspected that Lewis's rear wing, like when the DRS is open, I guess the rule is it can be only 85 centimeters. And they suspected it was bigger than that. And I'm like, how can you possibly tell? And then there's the video surfacing of Max actually going over, like they parked their cars in the 1, 2, 3. And Lewis is out of his car and he leaves. And then Max gets out of his car and he goes over to Lewis's car. This is technically, the cars are in Parc Fermé. Like, you can't touch them. You can't fiddle with them. You don't touch the cars. But Max goes over and touches Lewis's car. He checks out the rear wing.
Yeah.
Everything to touch the thing, of course, that you think is wrong.
Yeah. Such a freaking mess.
Because so like, and we have seen, Shanika and I were talking about this at her birthday too. I'm like, there's the videos of Sebastian Vettel touching cars in Parc Fermé before, right? Yeah. And there's been no repercussions, but it's against the rules for F1. It's against the rules for all motorsport, pretty much, to touch those cars when they're in Parc Fermé. So it's like, and especially when it's like Red Bull, Max, you're saying this is the problem on Lewis's car, and then you go and touch it?
Yeah. Because you know then what's going to end up happening is that Mercedes is going to come back and be like, well, he broke it, which is
you did that. Exactly.
Essentially what ended up happening. You know,
well, and it's fair because it's like, this guy touched it. Well, okay, he ruined it, obviously.
It's a smart thing to do. So Red Bull obviously played their hand by saying it opened more than 85 centimeters. I don't know how you can see that, but
I heard it was like a 0.02 or 0.2 of a millimeter. And I was like, yeah, how would you know? How would you know?
No idea. Like, I don't know how.
And it wasn't across the whole wing, I guess. Like, it was like one side of his wing was fine. The other side was that little bit bigger. And I'm like, that's wild.
Oh my gosh. But I guess maybe, you know, Max has been behind a lot of rear wings in his life. Not saying that he's, that makes it sound like he's just not a great driver. He's a great driver, but he's been driving forever. So maybe he just saw something and caught on it. But I just think it was so, like, Red Bull would have had a better, I guess, ability to mention this stuff and kind of fight it and paint Mercedes poorly in the media if Max hadn't just gone and touched it. Like Max just shouldn't have touched it. It would have been fine. Like the same things would have happened anyways. But because he touched it, the whole situation just took so long for them to figure out. Like it was not resolved that day. It went into the morning, basically. All the journalists and everyone were told, okay, they're going to decide this tomorrow, like what the actual, I don't know, like the fines are going to be or the punishments are going to be. So for Max, he got fined 50,000 euro for touching the car, which is interesting. And I think it's like precedent setting because like we said, Sebastian Vettel touches everything. There's so many videos of him touching the Mercedes, touching like every other car.
But it's just like, yeah, I think it's precedence for like, you touch the thing that like your team is arguing against.
So I don't think any of the drivers will be touching any cars anytime soon, because 50,000 is, you know, maybe not a lot to these teams, but if there's a cost cap involved, stuff like that, like how does this play into that becomes a big question coming into the next years when a lot of the rules are changing. Caitlin, what happened to Lewis?
Yeah, so Max gets $50,000 fine, but I mean, he got off easy compared to Lewis because Lewis got full on disqualified from conventional qualification because he was a little bit more than that 85 centimeters on the one side of his rear wing. So that falls out of regulations. And yeah, like he gets sent back to P20 to start the sprint race on Saturday. So it's kind of like he got the fastest time in qualification, but with the disqualification, it's like he didn't run any time at all during Q1, Q2, Q3. That's why he was put at P20. But he did do free practice, so he was allowed to start on the grid versus starting in the pit lane, from what I heard. So, yeah. Lewis, P1 to P20.
Yep. And whoever, like, do they give out those little Pirelli wheels? Because, like, normally it has the driver's names and stuff on it. So I'm guessing they just had to, like, I don't know, remove that somehow. And then does Max just automatically get pole then?
So, okay, isn't that the whole conversation about sprints? Because we don't know, like they're saying pole comes from sprints.
Which is so confusing.
But a lot of people are saying that they don't agree with that because pole should go to the fastest qualification.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh.
But we don't have an answer is what we're saying.
I think that's something that maybe they take away for the next season to try and iron out, have a bit more clarity.
I agree.
Like maybe they honestly have to change the definition of pole.
Yeah, that's probably what they'll need to do actually, because they want to keep the sprint racing. So they want to do that. That means they have to change whatever the hell any of this is. Right. For the sprint race, it was 100 kilometers, so 24 laps. And Max, of course, was starting P1. Valtteri was in P2.
Yeah.
I was really happy to see that.
So he's pulling his weight. He's doing pretty good. Starting front row of the grid for the sprints on Saturdays. Pretty much we wrote down that he had a dream start on this sprint. He was faster than Max. He got to turn one and out in first place. So pretty much we have that like Carlos was actually sitting in P5. He passed Checo in P3. Like he was a bullet too during the sprints. Both Red Bulls kind of struggled at the start for some reason. Gasly even had a bad start too. So Honda, and he started P4. He went down 3 spots right away.
Nice. That's not so great.
Don't worry, he had an okay weekend overall. But,
yeah, he did. Brought it back.
We had Max eventually complaining it's the quote unquote fucking gear sync issues again on the radio. So that's not good. He was talking to Felipe Massa afterwards, and he said he also contributed the start to the tires because like Valtteri and Carlos, for example, were on softs and they opted the Red Bulls to start on mediums. The low track temp actually helped the softs, kind of kept them in better shape to last the whole sprint. Carlos was saying that in his interview, he anticipates it to be different for race day. Yes, it very much right. We had like Max eventually goes wide at one point. on the sprints, and Carlos passes him. It only lasted until lap 4, but like Carlos was
Still huge. Yeah.
right?
Welcome props to Carlos and yeah.
Because Carlos is saying he's comfortable with his car now, and you can see it.
Yeah.
And so
love to see it. So
we had Valtteri he's staying up in first place. We have Verstappen, he's chasing him the whole time, but he just could not catch him. He was even in DRS range a few times, even including one time in the last lap, but just could not convert it. So yeah, Valtteri ends up P1 on his softs, Max P2 on his mediums. Valtteri said his tires were pretty much dead after the checkered flag, but they held together enough. That's what matters.
For him to get that speedy finish, which is what he needed.
And Carlos ended up in third. So that's they get points, right? For sprint. Yeah. So Valtteri got 3, Max got 2, and Carlos got 1 point.
Good for Carlos.
Right?
Through all his friends. So
I heard, it might have just been a TikTok this week. I can't remember where it was, but they're talking about like people can't wait to see Mick Schumacher join Ferrari. Like he's part of the Ferrari Academy, and like his dad is pretty epic with Ferrari. And they're like, so it'll be Charles and Mick. And then people are just like, yeah, but what about Carlos? Because he's doing just fine. Right?
I didn't even think about that. Like, where would he go?
Right? He's doing great. He's picked it up. Like, let's see what he can do next year. If he can like convert more next year, it's just like, I don't know. I want to see him do okay. He is an underrated driver. I fully agree with everyone saying.
Yeah, everyone's saying that he's underrated. It's true. Like he's very consistent, has been bringing us so many points, and is on par with the prodigy that is Charles Leclerc. So it's impressive, honestly.
Yeah. I'm gonna let Shanika go into the
Hamilton. Okay. So of course, as we know, he started last. Which is okay because before turn 1, he ended up passing like 4 cars. And
keep in mind, they were like the Haas's. I think it was the Williams back there. But yeah, 4 cars.
Just
on the straight.
Yeah. And again, it's a freaking straight. Like it's freaking straight. Anyways, so he's already up to about 13th place in 4 laps, 5 laps. Like he just kills it. Mercedes is known to be really good at this track, but also because it's a great place to overtake. They know that their strength is the straights anyways, and there's again a lot of straights in this one, so they were totally fine taking the penalty, because they did take a penalty for their internal combustion engine, right?
Yeah, they changed. That's something we forgot to mention, but Lewis was having his 5th internal combustion engine of the season. So that's a 5-place grid penalty that he has to serve on race day Sunday.
Yeah, which is important to note. So he makes it up. He ends up in 11th, right behind Danny Rick, which is always the hardest thing because we know that passing McLaren's is like mission impossible.
And Danny Rick can make his car like this fat.
Yeah. His car is just huge.
Yeah.
Danny ends up being in the DRS range of Vettel. So there's this weird DRS train, which makes it just difficult because they all have the same power units. I mean, it happens. Yep. He ends up persevering and he gets past Gasly, Leclerc, and Norris and up to 5th. Again, speaking about just the audience, when that happened, and I was watching this over like YouTube clips and stuff, huge cheer for Lewis. Especially
that last pass he had on Norris.
Yeah, was incredible. And I saw it all over on Twitter too, because people were like, oh, he's like, that's why he's the GOAT.
That's what you remember, right?
Yeah, that's why he's as good as he is. Like he's showing you how skilled he is and why he's the best.
20th to 5th.
Yeah.
In 24 laps.
It just is like amazing. Was he the one that made the don't make sure you don't laugh at touch any car jokes on his radio?
I think that was a Mercedes radio. Someone's like, make sure you don't touch any cars. Fucking funny. Because you guys, everyone's bitter about this whole situation, but they're making jokes about it. That's good. There was a lot of sass over the radio this weekend. So much sass. And I think talking about sass, the king of sass this weekend was Toto. He's so happy after the sprints are done because Lewis was able to bring it back. Obviously, if
this race in general is just so important to the constructors, but also Lewis's world championship run. So he just needs to position himself better. But Caitlin noted here that his hair was just completely disheveled, which is like, I think, very Toto, and we'll see that throughout the rest of the race day. But he jumped on the radio and said, "Brilliant job," and then fuck them all.
So like on the radio, they bleeped it out, I swear, right?
Yeah, they censored him. But then
Shanika heard it afterwards.
Yeah, he had to clarify he doesn't mean, towards any of the regulations, but it's just like a mindset that they have, which is like, fuck everybody, we're just gonna do what we need to do. And I think honestly, fairly for this weekend, I would understand where they're like, fuck the FIA, because it just was a very messy weekend.
I think that was towards Red Bull too.
Yeah, I would think so too, just a little bit, because
like Valtteri gets P1 from these sprints, and I think it was his race engineer telling him, and he's like so excited, he's like, woo! And then you hear like it's Toto talking to Lewis, and he's like, he says that, and you're like, okay.
They are not happy. Like, they're here to make sure that they do what they can to win. So unfortunately, there were problems with Alpha. Antonio and Kimi bumped each other, so Kimi ends up spinning around backwards, which is not great. But the top 10 was Valtteri, Max, Sainz in third, which Caitlin talked about, we're so excited about. And fourth is Checo, then Lewis in fifth, again, impressive.
Yep.
Exactly. Lando Norris is right after him, then Charles, Pierre Gasly, and last but not least, Esteban Ocon.
So note again about Norris. So I saw a quote from him after the sprints, and he pretty much was like, the fact that Lewis could do that in 24 laps, he's in a different league than us. Can he do the race tomorrow on like 3 tires or something?
I saw it on Twitter. But it's true. Like, it just showed the speed of the car, right? Like, they did
just like the skill that Lewis has to just like that. There was a lot of rage and anger, I think, underneath, and he just like he converted that into gaining 15 spots in 24 laps. No small feat.
It's no small feat at all. So as we head into race day, the thing to remember is that Mercedes upgraded his car, so he has a 5-place grid penalty. So even though he ends up in P5, he starts in P10, and
he starts P10 with a new engine. That's very advantageous for him.
Super advantageous, especially given where we are, which is there's only 3 races left, coming down to the wire for everything that I talked about, but also because just how the car freaking performed today was insane. It is quite the start, right, Caitlin? It was enough to like wake me up.
There was a lot going on. Like, am I getting everything? Am I soaked it in?
There was a lot happening.
I don't even know where to start. We're gonna try with Lando and Carlos though, because we love them. We love their bromance, but they kind of had a little bit of a tussle. Carlos had a great start for sprints. He did not have a great start for the race. Lando had a really good start, and he was starting right behind him, and he goes on the outside. There's not a lot of room on the outside. Carlos got squished by someone else on his other side, and he hits Lando and actually punctures his tire. So literally on the first straight off the start line before turn 1, Lando gets a puncture.
So depressing. The stewards, of course, they call it a racing incident, which it was. Like, the way that Kaylin described it is spot on.
I do think like off the start line, there's just so many cars. It should 99% always probably be considered a racing incident.
Yeah, especially like we know going into turn 1 at a track where you can actually pass people, it's going to be like this. It is always like this. It's never good. Both of the Ferraris end up going off track.
Yeah, that was I don't know how that happened. There's so much going on, but you just one Ferrari and then the next, and they're off track. What?
It was so ridiculous. Unfortunately for Valtteri, though he had such a great start again in the sprints, in the actual race day, he didn't have such a great start, and Red Bull came firing through. So he didn't close the gap basically what he should have done is exactly what he did for the sprint day, which didn't play out as well. So he ends up getting pushed by Max a little bit in turn 2. So we end up with a Red Bull 1-2, with Valtteri kind of chasing them right out the get-go, which like sucks so bad.
Because again, the conversation comes back to Valtteri, just hold them off for a little bit longer, please.
Yeah, so that Lewis can do what he can, which is work through the back of, not the back of the grid, but like the 10th. And unfortunately, it just didn't play out the way that they wanted, which kind of sucks. But the good news is that, of course, while this is happening, Lewis is doing his thing. But it's not all is over, unfortunately, with this start.
Right? There was more going on that we saw.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, again, you're trying to like see like 6 different things happening in front of you. There was it wasn't a crash, it was a coming together. Come to Jesus moment, come together, whatever you want to call it, between Tsunoda and Stroll. So you actually like, and they start doing the replays because this turns out to be pretty significant. And you see how much body work Tsunoda loses from this touch with Stroll. And it's like, then there's debris on the track. And like, I just remember the commentators being like, are they going to keep racing, or is this affecting the racing line? Like, are they going to do something about this? Is there a safety car coming out? I'm like, yeah, is there? Like, I wouldn't want to drive with that on the road.
They didn't say anything for so long. Hey, like the stewards didn't call anything for so long, but there was a literal like front wing or something like on the track, among some other pieces. So it was really interesting that they didn't call it sooner. I thought it was
yeah. No, exactly. Yuki in his post race, he was saying like he pretty much put it on Stroll to be like Stroll wasn't looking at all. And then like the whole thing goes under investigation. They end up penalizing Yuki with 10-second penalty. Yeah. I had no idea. And it's like, so Yuki, he's like, Stroll was the one not looking. I don't understand my penalty. And I'm like, interesting. Yeah, because you can kind of see it.
Yeah.
I can kind of see Stroll, like he turns left kind of into Tsunoda. It could also be racing incident because it's still so early. I don't know. But that's what the stewards decided. And that whole incident, they do eventually decide to clean up the track, and we go to a Mercedes safety car. So Red Bull starts with the 1-2, and they can gain as much room in front of Valtteri as they want, but come the safety car, things really start to, you can come back together.
Exactly, because like, remember what's the one rule about the safety car? You cannot pass. So it's a great like little reset essentially for Mercedes, not so great for Red Bull because obviously they want to get their distance, while the safety car is out. Georgie Russell, he goes to the pits, and as does Yuki.
Yeah, he has to fix his
entire car.
This is lap 7.
Yeah.
With the safety car that they're doing those pits out of 71. So it's like, that's a really early pit.
Yeah. And also we should note that obviously with Lando getting his puncture so early on, he also had to pit in the first.
Poor Lando got the puncture before turn 1, had to do the whole lap.
Yeah.
The puncture before he could go to the pits to get it changed.
Just a mess. And
he lost a lot of time, and he was in P20. He was behind the Haas's,
which is embarrassing. No one wants to be behind the Haas's. So of course there is a restart. What ends up happening?
Yeah. So what did you write this order in, or did I? During the safety car, you had Max, Perez in 1-2, and then Hamilton was up to 3rd at that point.
Was he up to 3rd? I thought he was. I didn't.
Kind of seems like it. I think Hamilton was in 3rd at that point, and then Bottas was in 4th.
Yeah, because they swapped. They had to.
Yeah. Valtteri had to give up a spot. It was team orders to give it up to Lewis.
Yeah,
and you saw how slow he had to go to let Lewis pass.
Also, let's note though, this is lap 7, people. Lap 7, Lewis Hamilton's already in P3,
and Lewis started P10.
Insane.
Impressive. So we do have a restart. The Mercedes safety car leaves, and we have restart. And I guess like there wasn't too much that happened because Red Bull did a really good job warming their tires. So they had a really good restart, versus like Mercedes, I don't think did.
No, they didn't.
So there was no overpassing, nothing that eventful happened after that. But Valtteri almost got passed by Charles, who was in 5th. That was interesting.
It was so awkward
It
to
almost
watch.
happened.
Yeah, because it was like the cars were not warming fast, like the tires weren't warming fast enough, so then they're not driving fast enough. But then like Ferrari, with whatever upgrade they've done to their engine, which they did, I think a few races ago, significant change. But you can see that Valtteri just needs to like block Charles essentially, but like Valtteri can't really speed up because he can't pass Lewis
because he just let him through on team orders.
It just ends up looking so weird.
It did. It looked, yeah, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just disjointed or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think in any other car, if he wasn't in a Mercedes, he would have just like passed Lewis.
Yeah, it would have been fine, but you could tell there was like he was holding back. But part of this restart away from the front was that Mick Schumacher actually touched an Alfa Romeo. I don't know if it was Gio or Kimi. Do you know?
No, I didn't even see this one.
Yeah, I only saw like I think replays. He touched an Alpha and his whole front wing went under the car. So you guys, we just had cleanup from Yuki's car under a safety car, and now there's more debris on. Mick's like on the radio to his team. He's like, "Where's the front wing?" And they're like, "It's under you."
Oh no!
Oh, Mick. So yeah, we have more debris on the car, and there is a virtual safety car this time. So I guess they have to decrease their speed by 40%. They have to drive to a set delta. Yeah, there's no actual physical.
Yeah. So with the virtual safety car, it basically just means everyone slows down, which helps then the I don't know what they're called. They're not stewards, but just people like run out on the track, grab all the pieces. Obviously, if the drivers are driving at 300 kilometers an hour, that would be very dangerous for the staff. So it's a virtual safety car. And there is another restart, and we're in like, again, an opportunity for Lewis, everyone to just like get situated a little bit better. And I think at this point, Perez was like quite far ahead. There was like not.
Yeah, like they went into before the virtual safety car. Lewis was pretty, like he was 1 to 2 seconds, I think, behind Perez. But they come out of the virtual safety car and it was like 3 to 4, I think. Like it increased in time between them. But then I got messages from, shout out Chris Yim was sending me messages with this whole Lewis and Perez situation. He's like, what is happening? And I'm just watching. I'm like, I don't know. This is wild. Because we get a race between the two of them and it was pretty epic. From laps 17 to 19, I think it was.
They're just, Lewis is gaining on Perez and you're like, oh my gosh, first of all, this car is so fast, but of course Perez is doing what he needs to do. And
Perez is an experienced driver.
So give me 1 second. Anyways, so Perez is doing what he needs to do, which is just try and get ahead of Lewis and stay ahead of Lewis. Hold on, my parents are asking. Hi, everyone. Sorry, we've been pausing and restarting all over again because my parents keep asking me questions about things that don't matter. As I was saying, Perez is doing a really good job, but then you see Lewis gain on him, and then Lewis makes the pass in a turn, and the crowd goes wild, and you're like, woohoo, and no, it doesn't last very long.
Keep going. Because Lewis passed him, that puts Perez in DRS of the newly passed Hamilton. And he repasses Hamilton immediately after. And you're like, oh,
2 seconds, it feels like. Cool. And then, so with that, Lewis had to wait another lap and finally does the pass.
Passes Perez again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun little race to watch, those two. Because it's always like Lewis v. Max.
Yeah.
This whole Lewis v. Perez. That was very...
It was good to see you. And it was also like cool to see how the audience is reacting to it, right? Like the spectators and stuff. It was super cool to see. But then Caitlin, around lap 30, what ends up happening?
So yeah, we have another virtual safety car, you guys. The third safety car of this race so far. Stroll's Aston Martin. There's considerable debris on the track again. I didn't know why he had.
No, and
what
I
happened
wonder
with
if
the
it's
car.
like it just post like whatever happened to you with him and Yuki, like if
Maybe.
something like jolted there. But yeah, basically he's driving and it seems like I forget what it's called, the under part of the car, the floor of the car, a bunch of debris just comes off of it. And you're like, what is going on? Okay, fine, virtual safety car, we're waiting again.
Yep. But so to that stage, I'm pretty sure we had the top three, which was Max, Lewis, and Perez had all pitted, but Valtteri hadn't. So now we're in a virtual safety car and Valtteri does his pit. So that was very advantageous for him. He saves quite a bit of time. Someone's going a lot slower than they normally would. And then Esteban Ocon did the same, and so did Danny Rick. So it's like, ooh, you guys got lucky there, didn't you? But yeah, the fact it was the third safety car,
freaking amazing,
before even like halfway through the race, and it was like, oh.
Yeah, it was like not your typical race, I swear to God. We just wanted to highlight just again how far Lewis came. So he started in 10th, he was up to 6th in 1 lap, and then up to 3rd in 5 laps. Obviously, again, given team orders, he had to pass Valtteri. What I think is interesting though, and this is something that Caitlin noted, which I noted too, was when there was the safety car, Lewis clearly has speed in his car, has the right pace. He said, tell Valtteri just to follow me. Let's get these guys, which is essentially like a tow that comes if your teammate's behind you. You can drag them along essentially for a little bit as they follow the safety car. And then Caitlin, what happened over at Red Bull? That was
well, it's like, okay, we see that the teamwork with Mercedes, with Lewis very much being like, hey, I'll give Valtteri a drag. And it's like, okay, so Red Bull, you have Perez in front of Hamilton. This is before the passes, you guys. And it's like, is Max supposed to slow down so he can get Perez to pull Perez away from Lewis? Teamwork. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Max kept just pulling out in front.
The thing is, Perez asked for it. Like he asked the team for DRS from Max and he just never got it. And I just think it's so awkward.
It's just like,
oh, it's so awkward.
Yeah. I don't know. It can be seen as like blatant favoritism, which we know is the case, or it's just like the strategist where like it's better for him to stay out front as much as he is, and you just fight off Lewis because you're experienced and you can.
That's also true because we know that Sergio Perez can reserve his tires. He knows how to like fight Lewis back. Like it's fine. But when it comes to pitting between the two teams, I would say like one of the things that Mercedes did right this time was they pitted before the Red Bulls. Like they pulled the trigger first and did it. And Max, I think, did it the next lap, didn't they?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, just because they were like, holy crap, what if he undercuts us or something? The usual. But because Lewis had pitted earlier, his tires were warmer, which made him just faster and able to reach Max. But he ends up behind the Danny Rick, which is a problem. Again, the McLaren's super hard to pass. They wanted to make sure he got out before then.
Slower pace,
and severely slower pace, especially what we figured out later that Daniel Rick was having issues with his engine, like not having the same amount of power. So just not great. But Caitlin's commentator said the same thing as the Sky One's commentators. So Caitlin was watching F1 TV, that it was still, all of this was an advantage for Red Bull versus really supporting or pushing Mercedes forward quicker.
Yeah, and I think it was like Max was on the radio after this to be like, we need to make the call first next time, you guys. Like we can't risk being undercut by Mercedes like that, because that never happens to the Red Bull team. They're always the first to pull the trigger.
Yeah, especially lately, right? It's been pretty much Red Bull pulling the trigger every single time.
Yep. So it was interesting to hear Max kind of try and play strategist to his team. But it ended up working in their favor. So I mean, good enough. Interesting Ferrari strategy for their pitting though. So Mercedes and Red Bull did go from mediums to hards, which kind of makes sense based on what we talked about the track earlier. Ferrari went from mediums to mediums. So it definitely inferred they were looking for a two pit stop strategy versus all the other teams were still like on the brink if it's 1 or 2. Ferrari definitely made it clear that they were going to do it too, because you could not last the rest of that race
on mediums. Yeah, absolutely.
So, we find out later on that it was not the case to stick with a 1 pit stop, but it's just it like, and the commentators were knowing, they're like, yeah, interesting that Ferrari's like choosing to do this from medium to medium, but good enough.
It's fine.
I like when they said that, I was like, oh, Ferrari management again, huh? Interesting.
It did work out well for the team though, so it's fine.
Maybe they did change the management.
Who knows?
That'd be interesting.
Who knows? There is a second set of pits, and there's a weird coded message to Lewis, and I heard it too, and I had no idea what the hell they said. I'll be honest.
Right? They were like, which tires would you want if we pitted you again? And then there was back and forth, and I didn't understand it because I think they were talking in codes. They were like, because we know that the other teams can hear.
Mm-hmm.
And so they obviously like practiced this before. What?
Quite literally using code to talk about tires. But yeah, they did that, and I was like, I don't know what he's saying. But
honestly, I could not understand a lot of the radio for this race.
Agreed. I don't know if it was, even when like Lewis was going back and forth, I found it really hard to understand. With Max in general, I never understand his radio, but even with Lewis, I was like, I don't know what's happening. So Max pits first on lap 41, and I'm like, oh my God, quick pit stop. Obviously, that's how it is. But did Nicholas Latifi do this on purpose? Because you see Max like leaving the garage essentially, and he's like slowly gaining speed, and he looks like he's just going to, get back on the track. But then it feels like out of nowhere, Nicholas Latifi appeared
coming out of the Williams garage area.
Yeah,
and he just cuts Max off, and it was like, oh, okay. Sucks. But Canadian, like what does he really have to offer in these races? But he pulled an interesting move this time.
Yeah, and kind of, I think, slowed Max down considerably. But also I think from a spectator view, I was just like, I did not see him like even go into the pits. I did not even.
He's not someone that they talk about going into pits.
So no,
like, you don't know where he is on the track.
Depressing. Valtteri was in after that, and he was quite hesitant. He's asked, just, are you sure about this? And that hesitation about strategy was kind of carried on, I would say, throughout the race and even after the race. So the F1 commentators said that the move meant he couldn't play a part in holding off Verstappen.
Yeah, because it's like he got moved down to, like, with the pit, he ended up in like 3rd or 4th or something, and Max got a free pass past him.
Mm-hmm. Which, not great. So Valtteri's whole thing was, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but he just wasn't happy. And then Perez came in.
Yep.
So
Lewis again, was the only one out of top 4 to stay. He was the latest out of the top 4 to stay out.
Yeah. And then Lewis is the only one that stays out. Obviously, we're thinking, is that smart? Max is looking really, really fast. But finally, at some point, you do see Lewis go in. And I don't know, in my mind, Caitlin, I was thinking, oh my God, they didn't pull the trigger first on the second pit stops. Like, how is this going to hurt Lewis? And it does a little bit of moderate pain, because you see Max just like drive past as Lewis is coming out back onto the track. So
yeah,
kind of sucks.
Like, it I don't think it changed really anything.
No,
it was just like, it didn't help them. If they tried doing it first, maybe it would have, but
it just didn't help.
It was still like lap 40, 41, like you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That's still pretty early to go on your 3rd set of tires and make it last until 71. I thought that was interesting. So that's why I was like, could Lewis stay out quite a bit longer?
Right? I don't know.
But I mean, strategy, they have their computers.
They know, they see more than we see.
Whatever. Yes, exactly. But we do want to touch upon Mercedes strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
Hamilton and Bottas were not fans.
No. So with Valtteri, when he asked, "Are you sure about this?" he basically said that they threw away a Mercedes 1-2 because Valtteri was convinced.
He said it was an easy one too.
An easy one too. He was convinced that he could stay out there on the track just with the one stop until the end of the race. I will say the Sky News commentators that I was listening to said that they're not sure why Valtteri mentioned this, because they said he doesn't take care of his tires as much as like Sergio, Hamilton, or Max. Like he's not as clean with his tires. So looking at how degraded the tires were when the race was finished anyways, like there's no way that Valtteri would have been able to do that and hold on to a 1-2 like safely even. So not sure why he was upset, but also Lewis was upset, right, Caitlin?
Yeah, he was not happy. I guess part of the coded message was he wanted to go onto mediums. That was the code, but they put him onto hards. Bono pretty much had to talk him down over the radio and be like, there's lots of wear on the mediums. That's why we put you on another set of hards.
See, listen to your team.
It's very interesting because like, and you'll hear from so many different people being like, yeah, the drivers really know like the feel and how they're doing with the tires, but then like you have the strategists who see the bigger picture, and like, yeah, when they don't agree, it's like, we'll see what happens.
Exactly. Lewis, this was something that I did hear clearly. He jumps on the radio and says, "Is the undercut not that powerful?" And then
I thought,
and Bono was like, "No, not really." And I was like, okay.
But the undercut, like, was he referring to Max's undercut or attempt of undercut?
Maybe, or even like,
because Max was in front.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I thought it was a weird question.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I interpreted it as like, you know how you would text something to someone with like a question mark and an exclamation mark to like make it a really like important question? That's how I interpreted how he was asking Bono. And I'm like, is it really like that? Or it could just like, whoa, okay. That's how I respond to texts that have a question mark and then have a question mark. That's intense.
Okay, that's intense. Lewis at this point though has 2 to 3 laps with newer tires, and his speed, that's when we really started to see his speed though, where I was like, oh dude, this guy's super fast. But it's interesting that both drivers were disagreeing with the team, which I think is a classic thing that we've seen, I feel like, happen quite a bit with the Mercedes team this season, especially as we've been winding down the tail end for sure. But it looks like the team did make the best decisions today. So I'm glad that the drivers listened and didn't push back too
and that like they'll have the post-race debrief and everything so they can talk it out. So
exactly. So Caitlin,
at least it worked though. Yeah,
the head-to-head, the big battle.
So this is like the big event of the race, you guys. It was the battle between Max in first and Lewis in second, and we were kind of doing like play by play because we're just like watching it and like just writing what's on our minds, because you did not want to take your eyes away from this. Hamilton had DRS on Max, went for the pass, but Max pushed him hella wide, and that was the source of like a lot of the commentators I was listening to were like, does that get investigated? What was he doing? Did he purposely not make the turn and like made Lewis go extra wide? Because Lewis ended up on like dirt and dirtied up his tires and everything. And it's like Lewis could have kept his turn going and then there would have been a crash. So of course, Lewis being the experienced one, right? It wasn't a Silverstone one. He did back out. But people are like, you couldn't see Max's steering wheel. So you don't know if he like kind of let go of his turn a little bit to push Lewis out further on the outside. I'm like, can anyone see that? I don't know if they actually have footage of that.
So from what I heard from the Sky Sports people, they were saying that they do have onboard cameras to see all this stuff, but they can't download it until the race was actually over.
Oh.
Yeah. So we'll see. Like, I'm sure that the videos will be floating around like either later today or into tomorrow.
But they made the decision though during the race.
Yeah.
They didn't say like, we'll keep this open until the end of the race.
They made the decision, and the decision was to call it like essentially a racing incident.
Yeah, nothing.
What were the F1 commentators on your end saying? Because the people on my end were like, that should have been a penalty.
Yeah, the people on my end were pretty much saying that they wanted to see what his steering wheel did, because he could have just like slid. He could have not made the turn.
Yeah. And
tires, but they didn't know. And they're like, his camera that they could see had honestly just flipped from view of the steering wheel to the rear. So like it just flipped before that turn.
Exactly. So I'll talk about like a really good example a little bit later between Gasly and Ocon of like what it's supposed to look like. But anyways, of course, Mercedes is upset. On the flip side, Christian's like, it's just racing, of course, because for him, like Lewis went so wide that he wasn't a threat for like another lap because his tires were so dirty. But when the Mercedes team told Lewis that it wasn't going to be investigated, he said, of course.
Like very sarcastically.
So sarcastically. And I think it's again this like fire of this weekend, right? Where it just feels like the FIA might be like,
it's like gaining up on him almost.
Yeah, a little bit. For sure.
So I put a question down, Shani.
Yeah.
From your opinion, was that the right decision to call it just a racing incident and nothing past that?
I think what they should have done is like flag it, but then wait until they got the camera footage, because I mean, Max is, he's kind of like I'm not saying he's a weasel, like he's just like knows how to race. But so
he's competitive,
right? So I'm curious to see like if he did lock up and then it was like he didn't have an option. But they should have just waited until they had the footage, because now they're basically making a blind judgment call without even seeing anything. But they said, Michael Massey, that they had all the information. Like they were like, we have all the data from the cars and stuff. So maybe they did see from that information that Max, like, I don't know what they see, but like that he did turn his wheel all the way that it was supposed to, but just like couldn't make the corner or something. I don't know. I just think it's weird because like none of us know, right? Like none of us have seen anything between all the people watching. So
I hope they do release like either address the question of like the steering wheel, like we saw footage of the steering wheel and he didn't like let go at all, or they address that like these are what they considered to make that decision, because there's going to be a lot of questions from a lot of people for that call.
100%.
Anyways, that's just, it keeps going though, right?
Yeah, Max is defending and I think what we should note here is like I feel like at this point Lewis was gaining like half a second on Max.
Faster at this point.
It was so clear and so evident that if it wasn't going to be this lap, the next lap, like Lewis was going to get him before the end of the race unless something like really drastic happened. And Max was like weaving and trying to defend.
I think Lewis was still slower in sector 2. Right. So there were specific parts of the track he knew.
You're right. And then there was like the straights where he would get like right behind Max and you're like, and then sector 2, not so great. But Max was weaving around so much that he ended up getting black and white flags.
Yeah. If you guys see the videos, like on one of the straights, Max is defending, but he's weaving, he's changing direction a lot. And like I can see how that's unsafe.
Yeah.
Yes. Especially at those speeds. So it's no penalty, but it's a warning, black and white flag. Don't do that. And they told Max and he said, yeah, perfect, say hi.
It's like
so much sass into like this weekend's radio.
That people are angry.
Lots of passion.
They really wanted to get that dub.
Scorpio season, just
that's true. And I actually think that, I don't know about transits or anything, but I think that today and tomorrow are going to be like the most, like people are going to say some bitchy things. So it's in the air right now.
You remember when we used to do the horoscopes?
Yeah.
Those took a lot of effort. That's why we stopped doing them.
It would take so much effort.
It would have been interesting to like have done this weekend.
Just to see what energies in the world. Yeah. Hamilton does get him though. And it's the third.
They called it like the third attempt to passing him. Yes.
So it happens on lap 59. Again, there are 71 laps and you hear Toto jump on the radio when that happens and tell Valtteri to go get him. And at that point, I'm gonna be honest with you, Caitlin. Like, if there was more than 71 laps in this, I think Valtteri could have gotten him in the end.
So. It did not, like, as soon as Lewis passed Max, like fight. The gap started growing quite considerably. So, and I think Valtteri was slowly catching up to Max, but it seemed that like the Red Bull just didn't have it the same as Mercedes did. So yeah, maybe Valtteri could have caught him.
Yeah, I think if there was, by the end, if there had been like an extra 5 to 6 laps, I think that Valtteri could have caught him, just because of how much Valtteri was eating at that time. And I was like, oh, he's consistently taking half a second out of Max, but also Max was just slowing down. It seemed like, significantly. I don't know.
Like the fight was gone.
Yeah, the fight was all gone. We did have a few DNFs. Lance Stroll, of course, after the damage to his vehicle, he was out.
Yeah. And then the other surprise DNF was actually Danny Rick. We couldn't figure out why. It's like question mark. Why is he out? Turned out to be a power loss. So that's an issue with the power unit that is kind of terrifying, because that powers the Mercedes
engine.
McLaren too. Yeah. So
lots of questions there.
I hope they'll probably talk between teams on that and try and figure it out. Right?
Exactly. I would think so.
But Danny was like, I think it's my first DNF this season. I'm like, I think it is. Right?
Yeah. And normally the drivers have like 2, right? A season.
Yeah.
It happens. We're going to talk about Alpine, another, I guess, like head to head, but Alpine and AlphaTauri. So this is what I wanted to mention. Because they did show the onboard, which is why this was not a bigger deal. Pierre and Esteban were like going at it, trying to pass each other, going into a corner, and you see from the onboard, like they do have like a gentle little bump, but you can tell that Pierre has turned his car like wheel all the way over, but he just locks up. Like you can see
to avoid
cutting off his like drive line and to avoid hitting him, but he does end up like bumping him a little bit. So that's what you'd want to see from Max too, is that Max's steering wheel is all the way over, trying to avoid hitting Lewis essentially. But yeah, we
have not seen that.
Yeah,
it's available. But yeah, so it was interesting because it was like Gasly had to pass Ocon, and then he was up against Alonso.
Yeah.
We anticipated Alonso to put up quite a good fight because we know he can. We saw that quite a few races ago, right? But it wasn't that much of a fight, to be honest. But so we put down that Gasly gets past him like butter. It's interesting because I guess like we don't pay enough attention to Alpine and AlphaTauri as teams in their standings, because they came into this race tied. I'm like, oh, huge. Shit, okay, they're tied. Interesting. And so like this race between Gasly and them actually is like quite relevant, quite important. So Pierre was really happy with the battle. He was very happy to fight with Alonso, had that racing opportunity with the 2-time world champ. And Shanika put down like Gasly is king of consistency. He finishes in the points again. Tsunoda didn't, but Gasly's like holding that team.
He is truly carrying the team at the moment. But yeah, I just thought it was impressive. Like Gasly did not have a great start with anything, it seemed like, this race. So for him to somehow claw his way back into the points is really great. And to outdo both of the Alpines, even freaking better for him. So it's good for the team. The next we're talking a lot of like head to heads here. It's like interesting. McLaren versus Ferrari. Caitlin.
Yeah. They because we noted how close they were before the summer break, right?
Yeah.
And then back and forth, and then Ferrari got their engine upgrades, and they've been doing real good and like very consistent. And this race, it was like Charles and Carlos were one in front of the other pretty much the whole time, right? Versus it's like Danny, Rick, and Lando were like oceans apart. And like even if they started in their normal positions and Lando didn't get a puncture, they don't race close together.
No, not like that.
No, so it's like Ferrari getting these two guys like consistently getting a good haul of points, like they're pulling away from McLaren. Like McLaren's in fourth, not as good as they once were.
Yeah.
Ferrari, but
That gap keeps growing between the two teams.
Yeah,
I had
unless we have Lando getting like another, I don't know if Danny will ever get another one this season, but like, could Lando get a 3 again? That's kind of what I would hope so. Because when Lando was getting his 3s and 4s, he was the one holding McLaren in front of Ferrari.
Yeah, that's true. He was carrying the team, as you said. I put a note here, but I don't know what is going on with McLaren in the tail end of the season. Like since Monza, or maybe like Sochi, when Lando came so close, didn't get it. It's just like fallen apart a little bit in some ways. Like they've fallen off the track that they were on. So Lando, it seems like he just doesn't have the confidence that he had prior to Sochi.
I think like it's confidence in the car's ability. Like he's almost constantly being like, he does not have high expectations. And I'm like,
exactly. And I don't know, again, if it's just the engine upgrades from Ferrari and they're realizing that at the McLaren headquarters, being like, what is Ferrari doing? Like we can't compete in that way. And then Danny is doing better in the car, but it's still not good enough to have Lando not feeling as confident in the outcome. You know what I mean? Like before, Lando was carrying the team, like Caitlin pointed out, so it was fine for Danny to take the time to get in the car and figure out what he needs to do. But at this point, it's like they can't have that. Like I don't know what's happened, but he's just really fallen off, and I don't know why. Not just the boys, but I would say the McLaren in general. And like, what is going on? Like, I don't have, they stopped development on this car and there won't be any more upgrades and they're just focusing on next year. Like, I don't know, but they were so close to Ferrari, really the comeback team, I would say, that we were so excited to watch. And right now they're just not doing as well.
Yeah, they're like, the way they're driving, I would not put them in the top 5 for any of my predictions.
Especially right now.
Like you could have banked to put Lando in like 3, 4, 5 at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And right now it's like, what is going on? McLaren, Zach Brown, get it together.
Right? Was that tattoo bad luck?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that because it's just a tattoo. It's probably fine.
Okay, fair. We won't go there, but yeah, we hope they turn that around.
Yeah, exactly. Red Bull did the classic pitting someone to get fastest lap back. Yep. So they pitted Perez, and at the end of the race, like as he crosses the checkered line, like he gets the purple and is able to yoink that point back.
From Lewis, right?
From Lewis, who had honestly been carrying it like the entire race, it seemed like.
Yep.
But there's some conversations on Twitter that it just isn't sportsmanlike. That I've seen that from a few reporters, which I kind of get, because you want the fastest lap to go to the fastest team, not because they were able to get on the tires basically when everyone else's tires are dying. But
it's like it's with the way that Mercedes and Red Bull have been doing the fastest lap, it's like they give their second drivers like position up to take that point away. And it's like, that's not really racing.
Yeah. It's good strategy because of course, take from Lewis, and that's good. But I think a way to solve this, because I don't think it's going to go anywhere, is these other teams. I was going to say McLaren and Ferrari, for example, they just need to be more competitive, because if they were also in quick cars, also setting fastest laps, then Red Bull and Mercedes wouldn't have the option to pit their second driver in the last lap to snag that point back, or just like snag the point back and have it not count for anything, which like happened with Valtteri, I think a few races ago. Like he was out of the points, but they used him as a bit of a pawn for making sure Red Bull didn't get it. So I think hopefully next year, with more of the teams spending the same amount of money, they can do that and have the teams just be more competitive at the front of the grid, the top of the grid. Versus it just being Red Bull and Mercedes.
Fighting for that. Yeah. No, agree. Hopefully we'll see what next year brings, but that 1 point, it matters in every race right now.
Truly, it matters so much. So Caitlin, what was our final lineup?
So we finished, you guys. Lewis got P1 all the way from, he started P20 in the sprints. He started P10 for the race. He ends up P1 here. So altogether, he got 25 places bumps.
Yeah.
25 place bumps. And to come in first.
Insane.
So people are like, this is one of the, like, this should go down as one of the best races of his career, because it really was phenomenal, right? Where did I put? I thought I added it somewhere. It's like, he has hammer time, but this one was like full on Thor hammer time. Like, he just blew me out of the water with like just his determination to make it through the pack.
100%. And something we should note is that Max, when he crossed the finish line, was about 10 seconds off of Lewis.
Yeah, like he dropped right off.
Yeah. So in second place, we had Max. And third, we had Valtteri, which is great. Fourth, Checo. Fifth and sixth went to the Ferrari drivers. So Charles and Sainz. Then Pierre Gasly outdoing both of the Alpines. So that was Esteban Ocon following him. Alonso. Norris, just not his weekend. So not great. Sebastian Vettel again would have been nice.
Just out of the points.
Yeah. Kimi, George Russell, and then Gio. Again, Kimi outdoing Gio, which is interesting. Following Gio, there's Yuki Tsunoda, then Nicholas Latifi, and the Haas drivers at the very, very end.
Just like Norris, it was not his weekend, but he was P20, right? After his puncture. And he clawed back to get a single point for the team. So that's not terrible.
Exactly. It is something for the team.
Yes. Especially because Danny was a DNF.
Max is still number one in the championship. And he's only ahead though by 14 points. I think that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So that gap is narrowing, but Lewis needs every win he can get right now.
Right? Like with 3 races left, and if you win first to second's 8 points differential. Sorry. It's getting late. It's like he has to win twice, and then you can't give it up on the third race though. So you have to win all 3 times, I think.
I think you do. Mercedes is out in front by 11. Charles is now only 3 points behind Lando Norris for 5th.
And that's like, it's crazy because Lando was up in 3rd in front of Bottas and Sergio.
And it's changing because again, they really struggled over like the later half of the season, which sucks. Some other fun things like Toto pointing at the camera when Lewis made the pass.
You guys should watch our TikTok. Shanika put it on her Instagram story too, but just the meme, it's the Toto meme pointing at the camera.
He is fucking hilarious. It's so funny. And I think we're going to see that meme until the end of time for sure. What's interesting though, Lewis was caught with a fine at the end of the race.
Okay, I didn't know this. What happened?
So I don't know if you saw this, but in his cool down lap, he took off his seatbelt. And that is a massive infraction. However,
he like went to go grab the flag or something from the marshal?
When he was grabbing the flag and like waving to the people. I suppose though in Barcelona in 2020, I think maybe a little bit earlier than that, Charles did 2 laps without a seatbelt on.
In a race though, right?
Yeah, and didn't get fined or anything. Lewis did get fined €5,000, €5,000, sorry. But then there was a weird note where he also has like a suspended 20,000 until 2022. So I don't know if that means that they're just like, he has money, so 20,000 is nothing.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but is it like if he does it again from now until 2022, then he'll get in trouble? Like I don't know why it's suspended. So if anyone knows what a suspended fine is, please let me know, because I was very confused by that, because it's just 20,000. So is it like if he doesn't do it for the rest of the season, then he doesn't have to pay the fine come next year? Like, I don't know. I have no freaking idea, but
it's really odd.
People were very nervous though, because of the way that the FIA had been kind of calling things, that they were scared that they were going to give him a harsher penalty that might have taken away his win. I don't think that was ever going to happen.
Could you imagine?
There'd be riots, literal riots. It just wouldn't be so bad. But
yeah, you guys, like the Brazilian people were so stoked to have Lewis win.
100%. They were so freaking happy.
So stoked.
So I don't know. I think, again, this is another precedent setting thing. So if anyone else is caught without their seatbelts on, looks like you'd be getting a €5,000 fine.
Like
followed
over
by,
say hi, honey.
followed by a suspended 20K one for however long. Like, I don't really understand any of it at all, but here we are.
It's very odd. Well, FIA made a lot of money this weekend.
Hell yeah. So the drivers are paying their meals.
It will go down as an epic race. We will be remembering this.
I know. I'm glad, even though that I was hungover, that I got some life in me enough to try and watch, because I do think that was he said it's his best drive ever. I'm sure there are other ones, but nice. I would say that's one of the best drives I've seen.
Yeah, he can literally say he started P20 from qualification and made it to a P1. Like, that's
insane.
Phenomenal.
It's so insane. Mm-hmm. That's all we have, folks. There are 3 late races left.
Yep. All in the Middle East, right?
All in the Middle East. Do we have any predictions, Caitlin, going into the next 3? What's going to happen?
Everyone, it was so funny in the interviews. They're talking about, because Qatar is coming up next and they've never raced there before. Only MotoGP has. And they're like, what way is turn 1? It's like, damn, you guys race there in a week. So
I want to figure that out.
Gotta try and get familiar with that. So I think that's a toss-up, being new. Saudi Arabia, I feel like maybe momentum's coming in Mercedes' favor right now. But like we're saying, like, Lewis has to win twice, assuming Max comes in second. And then he needs to, even if he does that, like, he can't let Max beat him by more than 1 point.
Yeah.
Third race.
Exactly.
So it's like, he has to have the momentum and he has to win. If we don't see him win, like, if he comes in second and Max is in first, I think that's the end of it. I think that'll push the gap too big.
I think so too. Right? Yeah. And like, the only thing they'd have to bank on, I guess, is like an accident or something. And you can't
do we put money on? Is there going to be an accident
between the 2 drivers?
Yes.
I think that's a high possibility, especially because it's like he's also driving to survive at this point, and I don't think he wants to back out of things as much as he has been. But he needs to be aggressive, because if he's not, he could lose. But I just think right now the Mercedes is so fucking fast. The car that we saw is really fast, and I think that's going to play a favor for Mercedes. I don't think Red Bull's going to upgrade the car anymore, Max's car. But if they do, like, is it worth taking the penalties? Becomes a question now, because like you said, it's just so tight. So I don't know what it's going to be like. But in our December episodes, we will have Courtney joining us, so she can give us her perspective on things.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks, we are coming down to the wire, and this is like the best season of Formula One.
Yeah.
Truly, it's so exciting.
So yeah, just like feel free, message us anywhere on any social media, engage with us, have fun.
And we'll see you in the next one, friends.
Yep. And stay checkered.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.